right, now I'm here at the site of the town once known as Buckman Springs, California. Now, to lay out a few things, yes, I am in California, and yes, I'm wearing a jacket. Actually, where I'm at right now, it's about 48 degrees, very high winds. It does not feel like California. And to think we're really just a few miles inland from San Diego, it's kind of wild. But so I'm here at the former site of the town. There's a lot of ruins just driving by down historic Route 80. You can already see a lot of the former foundations and superstructures of some buildings. So we're going to walk around, explore, and as we do so, I'll be giving a little bit of the history. The town of Buckman Springs was named after a man named Amos Buckman. Amos was born on March 10, 1821 in Vermont, and by the 1840s he had moved to Massachusetts, got married, had some children, and then in 1853 actually decided to move his family here out west and settle in San Francisco initially. He worked in varying different industries. He was a carpenter for a time and did get involved in a natural springs business that he had started. Now, in 1871, after getting into some legal trouble up there with the land that he had purchased, he moved his family down to San Diego, California. And it was while living in San Diego that Amos had learned of some property east of the city, out here more so on the frontier, where there was a natural spring. And this spring water had some minerals in it and things that had potentially some medicinal value. So following that dream, he decided to move his family further inland and started the town, which was really a resort town, known as Buckman Springs. And people would visit. They visited the natural springs, again, for medicinal and healing purposes. But, eventually a hotel was built, and the resort town sprung up essentially out of thin air. And Amos Buckman ran his resort until 1898 when he died. And from my research and understanding, he's actually the only person who is buried here on this property. So here in a little bit, we're actually going to go look for his grave. But it's pretty interesting to think that there was a natural spring waters resort here on this site. When you look around, there's really nothing here at this point. But to think that it was a pretty popular resort town. After he died, his daughter ran the business and created some other businesses here off of historic Route 80. But between the highway and everything else, and then the spring ultimately drying up, Buckman Springs, as far as the town goes, died. And today is just a ghost town with little remnants left other than multiple stone foundations and a few walls. All right, and this here is what I believe to be the ruins of the Amos Buckman Homestead that was built here presumably in the 1880s. And there's not much left of it other than some of the walls, as you can see. I do recall from other videos and articles that I've read, the chimney was standing here for over 100 years, but unfortunately a few years ago it actually collapsed due to high winds, which we're experiencing some of those high winds right now. But I really do like the coloring of these stones. It's just kind of like blasted out here on the ground, as you can see. Well, let's go ahead and walk through a little bit to kind of get a better idea of maybe the size of this house as it once was. Of course, you have people that come out here and tag things, which is unfortunate. And it is windy out here. This kind of drops down a little bit, but I'm not sure. There might have been a cellar here at one point. It's similar to other ruins we've seen. There is a staircase here. Let's see where this goes. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what these openings were for, what this foundation is to. But there is a lot of cement and foundations back here, as you can see. And this is looking at it here from the backside. Actually, here off to our right is Interstate 8. You can see some of the trucks going by. And over here, the quieter side, is historic Route 80. And historic Route 80 is really not used that much nowadays unless people are looking for maybe a shortcut off the highway, or going somewhere in the area for camping. But it was once a off-traveled road, and I mentioned it earlier, I believe, but after Amos Buckman died and his daughter Winnie took over the operations here, she established a general store, eventually a gas station, and Buckman Springs for the most part existed until the 1940s. But really, once the springs dried up and business slowed down here, the town went defunct, and this is all that's left of it. Or at least this is a part of it. Again, I believe this was the Homestead. This is pretty interesting, something I noticed here at the Homestead. If you look here embedded into the rock, you can actually see the wooden beams, and some of these have some burn marks on them, which I assume is probably somebody recent who did something like that. But these wooden beams are built right into the stone, and then you see the plaster over it. And this one you can actually see the end of a nail sticking through, and it actually matches a lot of the ones I've seen around here, kind of smaller, pretty much look hand forged. But that is really cool to actually see the wooden beam there within the stonework. Here on another foundation, kind of see some remnants of some piping here, which is interesting. Again, not super old, but certainly from maybe the early 1900s, 30s, 40s maybe, prior to the town, going under, essentially. But a lot of foundations out here in these fields. Again, we see some more of that piping here running through, so as you're walking around, just be careful. A lot of rusty metal you could trip and fall on. I will say, it was actually raining earlier. Again, between the cold and the rain, it really doesn't feel like California right now, but these blue skies are stunning. And I'm not sure if anybody's noticing a quality difference in this video compared to my past ones, but I'm actually using a new camera for the first time. So hopefully the audio and everything you're seeing here is a little bit better quality. That's the goal here, to provide, some nicer, higher quality content so you can come along with me on these journeys and actually feel like you're here with me. Now I'm here actually across the street from the Homestead ruins, and there are a lot more foundations and former structures that were once here. So back here we see, again, more cement, more stonework. I'm not entirely sure what this structure would have been, but presumably associated with Buckman Springs, of course. Not sure if it had to do with the actual bottling plant, which I know is a little bit down the road, but there was a hotel here, so who knows, maybe part of this is the foundation of the hotel that once stood here in Buckman Springs. Not entirely sure. This is I'm gonna step up here. Not a huge structure. I'm walking along the wall here, but we do see some old sections of pipe and some other portions of this. Again, not entirely sure what this was as far as Buckman Springs goes. It's kind of interesting. Here we see a pretty stout wooden beam sticking out of the ground. I'm not entirely sure what purpose that served here within this structure, but a lot more broken cement, and as we've been seeing as we walk around, a lot of rusty metal. That is a sizable, heavy piece. This, I'm sure, has some age on it. I don't know if anybody knows what this might have been used for. Obviously, it's a piece of pipe to something, but they don't make things like they used to. So if I were a betting man, this is easily from, the early 1900s, somewhere in that time frame. This is cool to see. But as mentioned, there are a lot of different stone foundations. Oh, yikes. That's just a hole. See water down there. You know what? I wonder I'm probably wrong on this, but this almost feels like this was an old well that they covered up, but I'm not entirely sure. But it is really beautiful back here. You can probably hear, got a little bit more traffic going down the 80 behind me now. They're probably wondering what this weirdo's doing walking along the foundation of this old building, but here we are. And looking, whoa, almost fell. Looking there off in the distance, this whole area essentially was Buckman Springs. So as mentioned, we've already explored the homestead over there. Here in a little bit, we're going to go down the road to the bottling plant, which is off in the distance. And hopefully here in a little bit, we can go check out Cottonwood Creek, which ran back this way, and all of that good stuff. So we're going to continue, go check out some more of the structures and former parts of Buckman Springs. I'm just a short distance down the road from the Amos Buckman Homestead ruins, and this is the remains of what was once the bottling plant for the natural spring water, that Lithia water. And as you can tell, it's been spray painted and tagged pretty aggressively, but we're going to go ahead and go in and see what's left here of this structure. It's not a very big building. But to be honest, I don't know if this operation here was ever really much of a large operation. Man, this thing is tagged inside and out. But again, this was once the bottling plant in operation. Though it is interesting to walk around and just kind of take in the structure a little bit. Because this one has a few steps that goes down. See some of the old rebar. I don't know what a lot of this stuff is. Looks like somebody was doing a fire there, actually. You can tell some burned wood in there at night. It's kind of interesting. Some old pottery of some sort that's here. Walking around, I found quite a few old nails like these. This big one here I think is actually modern, but this smaller one here, I don't know how well you can see it, has a little bit of a twist to it and definitely appears to be pretty old just based on its size as well as its design. There's even some other smaller components there, so always cool to see these here on site, and I'm going to leave them right where they are. Some of the evidence from somebody spray painting. Not a huge building. Very interesting though. A lot going on back here. You can see people have just thrown or abandoned things. It's kind of sad, actually. Not a lot of respect here for this old structure, but I will say it's just sitting here abandoned, so what would you expect? You know, people come out, they do things like this. Holy smokes. Yeah, there's a lot of old paint cans here. Some more burned wood. Yeah, you can definitely tell some teenagers were back here. Probably having a party, having a fire, spraying things up. Definitely drinking beer. But really interesting. I'm going to come out this way so you can get another look at the building from this angle. And the house was just down the road that way, maybe about a quarter mile. So this whole little area, like I said, you'll find stone foundations, was, you know, really known as the town of Buckman Springs, California. It was more so of a resort town. I don't think you really had a lot of people living here permanently. A lot of people coming and going, and tourists and visitors. But there was a decent footprint here along now historic Route 80 that no longer exists. Again, it's just kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature and the weather. But let's go ahead and walk back this way. I'm going to have to watch my ankles. There's a lot of cactus as I go back, but I believe, as I mentioned, there's the creek that runs back here. And we're going to watch where we are stepping. It's already sort of a trail here, which is good. Interesting. It really kind of opens up out here. Take a look back at the bottling building. And actually, I see a sign up here. I don't know. Obviously a very modern day sign. It says Buckman Springs this way. Let's go ahead and follow that. Well, that's kind of cool. It's a table actually made out of a section of tree. That is awesome. I'm not sure how or why that's back here. And this sign says Buckman Springs this way, but there's not really anywhere to go. Not that I can see. But I did see what looked like an alternate route, so we're going to go ahead and go back around this way and see what we might discover. Hopefully it's not a homeless person with an anger issue. And you can already see a lot of the trees changing colors. You know, up in New England, they kind of get fall and start to see those trees and the foliage, everything changing color earlier in October. But out here in many parts of California, we actually don't start to see that until, you know, late November in some places. All right, I am going way off the trail here. So hopefully I don't discover anything I don't want to discover. I'm not sure, this almost looks like the creek bed for Cottonwood Creek dried up, which I think it is, but I'm going to try to... Yeah, you know what? I think this might be the creek bed. I think that's what I'm standing in right now. I don't know if it's easy to tell on the camera, but I'm going to keep walking around a little bit and go back this way. But looking at Google Maps, I believe this is the creek. Oh yeah, sure enough, there we go. You can actually see, I don't know if I'm able to get any closer. This is pretty thick brush, but hold this up. You can actually see a little bit of water over there. So this was, or I guess is, the Cottonwood Creek. It's pretty much completely dried up. But this is here on the Buckman Springs property. But I will say, the picturesque views are really nice. And I'm really enjoying these yellow trees. Those are beautiful. All right, I'm going to head back towards the bottling plant, if I can find my way back. And next, we're going to go search for the final resting place and gravesite of Amos Buckman. Not much of a trail here, but sort of carved out here between the bushes. Man, this is going to be a mission to get back here. I'm sure there's an easier way, so if anybody's done this, don't make fun of me, but you know, where's the fun in it if it's not adventurous, right? Okay, I actually did find an easier way to get to his grave because I am not a bushwhacker and I am not equipped with the right tools to get through that brush. The good thing is there is a gravel road a little bit down 80 that you can turn down, and it makes it much easier to visit the grave of Amos Buckman. Now, Amos Buckman died on March 28th, 1898, and was buried here on the property. And one thing as we walk up to it, I want to point out, you can see the fence, this metal chain link fence that runs down, you know, all the way down that way straight in between Historic Route 80 and Interstate 8. And if you look, the fence actually kind of turns abruptly, comes to a point, and then turns back and straightens out again. The reason they did that is because in the 1970s, when they were doing some construction in this area, they actually uncovered the grave of Amos Buckman. And they, you know, interred him, made sure that was respectful, and because of where his grave was found, it's actually why this fence has this sharp turn, because right here in the corner is the grave of Amos Buckman. Now, this stone grave marker, of course, is more modern, which was placed in respect to Amos Buckman. But just to think that they'd uncovered his remains, you know, 50 years ago or so, and then ended up building this fence and diverting it to ensure that his grave remained here, I think is just too cool. Well, here I am at the final resting place of Amos Buckman, the founder and namesake of Buckman Springs, California. And figured this was an appropriate place to finish off my journey here. And it's kind of wild to think that his grave was, essentially unknown and lost until the 1970s. But it is cool to see that he is remembered today, albeit kind of a strange place for a headstone to be. But nevertheless, it's always fun to get out here, kind of explore those lesser-known trails, and to find things such as this and uncover the history of people such as Amos Buckman. Well, that's it for this one. Now it's on to the next journey.